What's going on, everyone? As you can see, I'm not quite finished with my recent Metroidvania kick, selecting as I did the ingenious 2017 release Alwa's Awakening, or Alwa's Awakening. Little V sound in there, but I'm just gonna pronounce it like an American and not like a Swede. Alwa's Awakening for my latest foray into desolate worlds, dope music, and difficult achievements. If you're a casual gamer, which is not a bad thing, just a description, then you probably haven't heard of Alwa's Awakening, and for better or for worse, to be frank, you probably won't like it. If you're a Metroidvania stan, on the other hand, you probably have heard of it and even given it a whirl, but even many of my fellow MV geeks didn't much care for it. So, if you very likely won't be enjoying it as a casual gamer, and it's 50-50 whether you'll like the cut of its jib as a Metroidvania fan, what makes me not only recommend it, but recommend it with gold stars, smiley face emojis, and thumbs up stickers? Why do I like it so much, in short? What's it all about, Alfie? I have a big, multifaceted response to this, and since I believe with unshakable, dogmatic, moral certainty that small, passion projects developed by people who make their products with their own blood, sweat, and tears, and who sincerely care about their audience, proved by constant interaction, not just by talking, but by listening as well. Such projects deserve special mention and support. And that's not to say quality doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's all that matters, but it is to say that a quality product cannot be left to languish and collect dust simply because it was made by obscure people with no money in the absence of big studio backing. And it's also to say that, in my opinion, a quality game made with love is better for that reason than an equally quality game made for strictly mercenary motives. There's good things, and there's good things that shine, you see. And call me superficial, but I prefer the ones that shine. And what I'm saying is that Alwa's Awakening shines. The game, yes, has problems, as pretty much every game does, yet nothing beyond the pale. More like certain aspects that have to be endured and adapted to over time. I'll get to that later. But besides, there are different ways to play it. You may not enjoy your first playthrough a whole lot. I certainly didn't, and yet you might find on subsequent runs that knowing the map and all the tricks and shortcuts makes for a really unique, fun, and challenging speedrun experience. A user reviewer on Steam, going by the moniker Dusty Mogave or Mogav or Mogavi, not sure, just want to give him credit. This guy, he ultimately could not recommend the game, he gave it a thumbs down. Nonetheless, he said something pertinent on the matter. Quote, "The game seems designed for speedrunning, and it does seem fairly successful as a speed game. If you ignore the story, if you remove all of the excruciating exploration, if you have a route planned out, and take advantage of movement tricks to sequence break and further shorten the game, then you've cut out all the worst parts of Alwa's Awakening, you've skipped all the tedious retreading and head-scratching fake wall puzzles. Then," he concludes, "you might have a decent game on your hands." End quote. It might surprise you to hear that I basically agree with this, with some crucial qualifications, of course. For those who checked out my Axiom Verge commentary, it also serves as a pretty good introduction to at least my take on the Metroidvania genre. You'll be aware that what I prize most in Metroidvanias, aside from the obvious things like gameplay, music, and atmosphere, is the process of working to find the hidden pattern underlying the surface chaos and at last perceive the game's inner core of simplicity. I just think that's an inherently valuable and satisfying process which no genre facilitates better than the Metroidvania genre. Hence, what this reviewer completely fairly sees as a negative, I see as a big positive. The more the game pisses me off, screws me up, frustrates me, and so to speak gets my goat at first, the more satisfying it is to finally see through the matrix. You know? Otherwise put, I don't take the initial frustration generated by most Metroidvanias as a bug, I take it as a feature. That's what the games are supposed to do. It's not bad design, it's purposefully concocted obtuseness intended as a challenge. Now, your mileage may vary on how much punishment and vexation you're willing to endure on the path to simplification, and there is a balance that needs to be sustained, which is, I would add, the real art of the Metroidvania game designer. A significant minority of people find, say, a game like Hollow Knight, hailed by most as a masterpiece, decidedly unbalanced in essential respects in terms of its initial Metroidvania obtuseness, leading them to not like it at all. For my part, I like it, but I don't love it. Axiom Verge? Love. Alwa's Awakening? Love. So you can see where my preferences lie. I like the old school classical style, being something of a classicist myself in my day job, and if that's not for you, then Alwa's Awakening probably won't be either. Fair warning then, stay far away if you don't have a sweet tooth for the bitter, laugh-in-your-face, 8-bit difficulty of old NES games. Whereas Axiom Verge leaned heavily into the Metroid side of the equation, Alwa's Awakening appeals to the flip side of the coin. Castlevania, particularly Simon's Quest, Zelda 2, the darkest game in the Zelda series and the only side-scroller, and a few other games of which I'll mention only the most notable. A little indie game of nearly incomprehensible difficulty called Battle Kid 2: Mountain of Torment, released in late 2012. The game is aptly named because it seems to have one goal and one goal only, namely to torment the player. Michael Forsland, the design and marketing man at Elden Pixels, that is, the company he founded with 3 other rambunctious souls and which is entirely responsible for Alwa's Awakening, said in a recent stream on Twitch that Battle Kid 2 was one of the main inspirations for essential aspects of Alwa's Awakening. And just watching him play through it, you can see its influence in many subtle details. Battle Kid's teleporters become warps in Alwa. The marks outside of the save rooms in Battle Kid look like those in Alwa. Many obstacles look virtually identical, and some of the bosses seem to have similar ideas behind them. And what's interesting here is what Forsland pointed out were definitive differences in the overarching, register of the games. Whereas Battle Kid 2 is like a bat out of hell, focused on blazing speed, quick twitch reflexes, and an overall reliance on instinct. Alwa's Awakening is virtually the opposite. Slow, moody, contemplative, or, for lack of a better word, cerebral. Forsland made it clear that he prefers a mood and tempo where the player walks into a new room and has time to examine the puzzle and size things up before making a move. And Alwa's Awakening stays true to that notion, while also, I would add, staying true to Forceland's other stated goal of having every room be capable of being run through, more or less without stopping. So you can play it in a slow and cerebral way, or speedrun it as if it were Battle Kit 2. Alwa's Awakening has been called, and if Forceland ever hears this, he'll get a chuckle out of this. It's been called good old non-violent fun for the whole family. It's a jokey line that Forceland came up with that got picked up and tagged onto the game seriously by others. More accurately, Alwa's Awakening is violent difficulty for the intrepid few. This game, in case it isn't already clear to you, is hard AF. It makes Axiom Verge look like a Telltale game. Forceland himself referred to it as a pixelated Dark Souls, so please don't get mad at me for drawing the comparison. He drew it himself. He's also said other things that give us a clue as to the kind of lighthearted sadism we're dealing with here. In one of his Battle Kit 2 streams, he just casually observed, only half-jokingly I'm sure, that, quote, all good games should have insta-death spikes. If it doesn't, then it's not a good game. I admit, I spit my coffee out when I saw him say that. The delivery was so deadpan, it was like he was delivering some kind of religious ukazi. Hilarious. And lest you think it's all just backbreaking torment, Elden Pixels put a good amount of rather clever, if subtle, material in the game to give some added weight, some heft and texture to the context of the lore and the world of Alwa. For example, the area known as Amber Cicellum. What the hell is a Cicellum, you might be asking? Well, I'm here to help. Cicellum, or in Latin I believe it'd be pronounced Sacellum, but we'll say Cicellum. It's the Latin diminutive form of sacrum, essentially a sanctuary or a sacred place. Literally then, it means little sacred place, okay? You see that? Back in pagan Rome, Cicella were taken to be areas without roofs in certain buildings, dedicated to some deity or another. In the Christian era, they referred to, those little chapels found in church, usually made evident by being walled off with some type of a screen. Yeah, so there's more. Alwa, take the name Alwa or Alva. It's a name mainly found in Sweden and Finland. The feminine form, I guess it's the feminine form of the name Alv or Alvar. Names like Aleph, Alf, Alfred, Alvin, even the Germanic Adolf are also related to the same root in Old Norse, I believe, which indicates a kind of shining or gleaming, or in general, supernatural elfin-type beings. A supernatural elfin-type being. I think the word elf also comes from that root. In other words, pretty much someone like Zoe, okay? The game's protagonist. So, it seems that this land and this girl were made for each other. A match made in video game heaven. And as if to emphasize this, Elden Pixels put a broken tablet collectible in the game with the name Zoe inscribed on it in Greek. And Zoe, of course, means simply life. Hence the word zoo, from the related word zoon, meaning living thing, or what we call an animal. So there's all sorts of little hidden goodies like that in the game. Not at all giving the lie to the developer's description of themselves as, quote, a bunch of nerds that got together to make games. Well, I'm one nerd who got together with myself to play games. So, yeah, another match made in heaven, right? And really, seriously, what is not to love I ask you, I put it to you, about Elden Pixels' mission statement. Quote, "The goal is to create fun, creative, and cool games with a focus on gameplay." Yes, if words could make sweet love to ear holes, the words "focus on gameplay" would be doing the nasty with my incus and stapes. Again, what's not to love? Elden Pixels, in other words, the people who make up the company, not only seem to be truly decent fellows, real mensches in the old Yiddish sense of the term, but actually are. Most of the schmucks looking down from the commanding heights of the game development industry couldn't give a floating fuck about any quality their customers possess other than having $60 to spend. Let's be honest. Elden Pixels, though, is a different breed altogether. I think of them as the Jerry Maguires of game development. Fewer customers, more personal attention.
Yeah, my best memory is like the day we released, like I think a day before we released it, we let streamers like stream the game. But I remember, I think it was release day, and we unfortunately we weren't sitting at in the same room. We were at home, but we talked through text and stuff like that, and we watched kind of like the same streams. And I remember, like, there was a streamer who finished the game and he didn't know that we were in the chat, and he was thanking us and he had such a good time, and then I almost teared up. And then I jumped into another stream and he was like 10 minutes away from the credits, and so I was almost tearing up. And then when we watched the second guy finish it, he was the same. He didn't know that we were there, and he had such a good time. He was thanking us again, stuff like that, and I just cried. It was incredible to see someone play your game and like thanking you. It was worth it. It was incredible.
Yeah, so I've seen these guys discussing everything from who play tested which levels in Alwa's Awakening to whether or not the last stage is too much of a difficulty spike. This isn't hyperbole. I mean, if anything, I'm understating things. I've seen them discussing, game design with measly commenter peasants beneath official review articles. True story. If you ask them why they didn't allow us to map magic casting to other keys or buttons, by Zeus, they will tell you. If you press them to patch it in, they will inform you very nicely, but with no BS, why they can't do it. To cut to the chase, the guys at Elden Pixels are so cognizant of the mutual dependence of developers and customers / fans that before you even get a freaking title screen in Alwa's Awakening, you get a message from them thanking you for purchasing and playing the game. Okay? Be still, my heart. Such simple gestures of gratitude seem like saintly exhibitions these days. And I'm going to be perfectly frank about this. That kind of passion, that kind of humility and generosity, it buys a lot of goodwill from me. So much so that I feel like a churlish ogre when I go on to criticize their game. You see, my droogies, most big developers couldn't care one iota about the things they actually develop. And I don't mean to overgeneralize. There are passionate and creative people everywhere, naturally. But on the whole, the business of the AAA development business is business. I might sound somewhat bitter about that, but that's not really the issue. It is what it is, way it goes on planet Earth, nothing to be done but smile slightly and sigh a little sigh. And yet, there are also people like those at Elden Pixels who unreservedly pour their hearts into what they do. And no matter how flawed or unsatisfying the end product winds up being or seeming to some people, that love and devotion, they lend to it a kind of glow, a certain radiance. It shines, as I said earlier, it shines with something warm and personal, to the point where playing the game almost feels simultaneously like getting to know someone. That's why I'm saying it feels churlish to pick out its flaws. But this is not a review or a critique video, so I'm not going to go into any significant detail about positives and negatives. On the minus side, what can I say? I was never bored playing Alwa's Awakening. What I was nerve-poppingly frustrated by the feeling that I was fighting the game. Fighting the game and its mechanics more than the actual enemies themselves. This is no longer so true, but it was on my first playthrough. Human brains, they tend to pick up on such things. Consequently, since I was fighting the game so relentlessly, my brain began to tell me that the game was the enemy. You understand what I'm saying? In fact, you really have to play it for yourself to see exactly what I mean, and you really have to try to obtain the GottaGoFast trophy to fully see what I mean. But still, the best way I can put it is to compare the game to a strange, archaizing type of literature. Most games, like most books, are written, as it were, in a common or popular style that's therefore readily accessible, right on the surface. And yet, a few books aren't. They aren't written like that. From maddeningly dense tomes like Joyce's Finnegan's Wake to deceptively simple, bizarre, borderline impersonal works like Kafka's The Trial, classics are written this way. It doesn't make these books bad, obviously. What it does do is make them difficult, inherently, labor-intensive, demanding, and frequently, yes, frustrating. The problem this type of obscure work creates for its authors is that the more you, as an author, demand of your audience, the more they will demand of you. All of this work, we think, it better have a whole hell of a lot of payoff, lest we toss the work down in disgust and conclude that the author is nothing but a presumptuous ass wasting our time. You see what I mean? In a word, the rule is, if you ask for my all, you damn well better give me yours. Now, with respect to Alwa's Awakening, as you can probably see, there's issues with some of the way that the mechanics interact with some of the, obstacles or platforming puzzles. And those problems tend to revolve around one area. The last area, the Altar of Echoes. Brilliant in conception, but mostly botched, I think, in execution. It is not to be trifled with. You can actually be a highly skilled and talented player and make it more or less easily to that final stage without dying once, and then, within the span of 5 minutes, take 6 insta-kill, janky hitbox deaths that force you to wonder if you have any idea at all what you're doing. On the whole, it's not really a difficulty spike, so much as a plain old bullshit spike. And I do realize that NES games were marked by nothing more than their arbitrary bullshit spikes, so if you want to imitate them, you gotta do it like a G, I guess, and take the bad with the good. Fine. I get it. The point is that bad is bad. It was bad in 1986, and it's bad today. Elden Pixels admitted on Steam, I saw this, that they were only able to get a pretty biased group of people to playtest the Altar of Echoes. They also noted that it was designed very late in the day. Suffice it to say, it shows. At least that's how it appears to me. It's not polished enough to serve as a climax to all of the expertly balanced material that went before. I mean, you can actually feel the difference in polish when you're speedrunning it. And Lord knows, I could be wrong, but either way, you need to be prepared for it. And I should add that it's not to say, none of this is to say in any way that it can't be mastered. Many difficult games consist in a call to learn how to work around piles of bullshit and jankiness. And so long as said bullshit is consistent in one place or throughout the game, the player can gradually learn to adapt. Plan, work around it. And that's pretty much the lay of the land as far as my criticisms go. Is it too brazen a transition for me to say that I absolutely love this game? I'm kind of obsessed with it, honestly. The atmosphere is outstanding, the conceit is excellent, but here's a pet peeve of mine. It has nothing to do with the game. Many reviewers call games like Alwa's Awakening merely, quote-unquote, merely retro, or merely an exercise in indulging the warm and fuzzies of nostalgia. Everyone's entitled to their perspective, of course, but these ones strike me as both unfair and way too simplistic. See, the question is why these retro-inspired games are doing so much inspiring, and it's plainly not any kind of answer to say it's nostalgia. The hell does that mean? It's viciously circular, and thus not an explanation. I mean, the argument, such as it is that nostalgic games are popular because people feel nostalgic. Well, no shit, Sherlock. And food is popular because people are hungry. But why are we hungry? We need to eat to stay alive. But then, why do we want to stay alive? Now we're getting somewhere. There's the question worth asking. There's the question to which the answer will really tell us something interesting. And likewise, I'm saying, for our purported nostalgia. Why do we feel nostalgic? For the time being, I want to emphasize only one thing. Works that have been around for a long time, that have brought a lot of joy, formed a lot of memories, shaped a lot of perspectives, molded a lot of friendships, and ingrained themselves so deeply into both our personal and our cultural fabric, are capable of withstanding greater and greater refinement and emerging from the assault still in one piece. They're too strong to fall apart, generally speaking, when subjected to the destructive winds of time. In point of fact, time just makes them stronger. Thus, we look back on all of that foundational stuff and see a kind of purity, robustness, and a special sort of freedom. Freedom from current day pettiness and nonsense, from everything extraneous to just being a good, fun, challenging game. And so it feels almost like clean air, breathed in after exiting a shithouse. Clear, clean air, way up on a snowy mountaintop under the brightest skies imaginable. That's an image of purity. We want to be able to breathe again, to play again, right? To indulge in the simple pleasures that make living bearable, to face elemental challenges, primal stuff. A state like that is almost childlike in its naivety, yet it's also mature because it's deliberately cultivated. Quite simply, it's wise foolishness of the sort that our hyper-self-conscious, exaggeratedly ironic, smarmy, sarcastic, supercilious day and age no longer recognizes as valid, except in the past, where it's safe to unabashedly, unironically admire things, as in a museum. So, you'll forgive me if I tell you that calling things like Alwa's Awakening, or Axiom Verge for that matter, merely retro, or only exercises in nostalgia, flat out misses the point. And to say it again, the point is that we need to breathe clean air from time to time. To live, act, and think straightforwardly and plainly. All in order to get our minds right and our priorities straight. Alright then. Let's get to specifics. The story of the game is simple. The once placid land of Alwa has been subjected to the iron fist of a despot known as the 1hr and his 4 henchmen, the so-called protectors. The people of Alwa summon a girl named Zoe from some unspecified other world to free them from this burden, and she dutifully obliges. That's it. That's the story. More or less, it's the same story as Axiom Verge, without all the science kitsch and surrealist bells and whistles. The 1hr is Athatos, Zoe is Trace, Alwa is Sudra, Potato. Same setup, with an admittedly different way of unfolding. And like the story, the mechanics are, you guessed it, simple. Jump, hit things with a magic wand, and cast a few basic spells. Period. For your health meter, it's 3 strikes and you're out. Simple. The graphics, of course, are 8-bit simple, as intended. They're also gorgeous in their way. And the music. Last but not least, the music. While also simple, blip and blot material, chiptune stuff, as the composer Robert Kreis put it, it's completely magical. An unqualified triumph of the art of video game soundtracking. I know I gush about music a lot, but that's only because I make videos on games where it really grabs me. I'm almost embarrassed to admit how much my cup runneth over with the music from these retro-inspired Metroidvania games. No one deserves that much unmitigated indulgence in sheer aesthetic pleasure, It's like, what did I do that was so good to deserve such beauty? I'm sure I did nothing, and it's all to be chalked up to sheer good fortune, but whatever the case, as I did with Thomas Happ, I want to doff my cap to Robert Kreis for blessing us with this sinfully good music. Now, unfortunately, the only thing about Alwa that's not simple is arguably the most important thing. Mastering the game's map and its gameplay. As with all rich simplicity, it's actually highly complex, and either fortunately or even more unfortunately, the toughest trophy/achievement in the game mandates such mastery. On the whole, the trophy list for Alwa's Awakening isn't very demanding, except for the one that probably stood out to you if you happen to take a look at it. That would be the trophy known as GottaGoFast, which is rather deceptively named since it's not purely a speedrunning trophy. Little Nightmares had a very similar trophy called Hard to the Core, which entailed beating the game in an hour without dying. In Alwa's case, GottaGoFast tells us to beat the game in under 2 hours while taking less than 5 deaths. And I suppose that means no more than 4 deaths. I'm not sure why they didn't say 4 or fewer deaths, but yeah, it says less than 5 deaths, so 4 deaths or fewer. Since not dying in these types of games usually means going slow, the opposite of fast, a more appropriate name for the trophy would be something like Gotta Go Fast and Slow, or maybe just Go Slow Fast. It's 2 requirements that are typically at loggerheads, you see, and that's why they're often broken up into separate achievements, as in Axiom Verge. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of these types of almost self-contradictory trophies, which I always imagine being floated by developers with big, shit-eating grins on their faces. They're difficult, and that's great. The problem is they're also no fun, which is not great. GottaGoFast is no exception. It's not fun. So the first thing I'll say, by way of recommendation, is that if you don't love this game, or have a hard-on for platinums, or are not a masochist, do not do it. Don't. Do not. It is pure misery and frustration in the form of digital code that you have absolutely no reason to subject yourself to. You have been warned. However, I realize that many, if not most people watching videos like this are fucking stupid, thick-skulled cretins like me, like yours truly. Cretins who take even the most sensible warnings as an affront to their pride and in effect a kind of challenge. I assure you, it is not my intention to insult or cleverly impel anyone. When I say don't do it, what I mean is don't fucking do it. Period. But as I said, I know reason doesn't wear the pants in our psychological relationship to games, much less to trophies, so let's stop. Let's stop with all this rationality nonsense, shall we? Okay? So, you're irrational, like me. You're motivated to do something dumb, for no good reason, like me. You want to wipe that shit-eating grin off of the Elden Pixel team's faces, again like me. Well then, in all those cases, I think I can accommodate you. Vide this video here. There aren't any walkthroughs available to my knowledge, specifically aimed at the average insane gamer / trophy hunter, as opposed to highly skilled speedrunners. Alwa's Awakening is forbiddingly difficult to truly speedrun. Difficult to the point where I'd say it's simply beyond my ability. I wouldn't even try. It's probably beyond yours as well. Speedrunning the game, meaning here just doing what the speedrunners do, is a complete non-starter. Not gonna happen. If you're still interested in that or just curious about it, you can check out a YouTuber named Suspense's tutorial. It's quite short and quite advanced, but you know, it's worth looking at. Though I don't think you're gonna get much out of it. These guys like Suspense, are beating the game in well under an hour using some of the most precise inputs and near pixel-perfect movements a modern game can ask for. But all we need to do, per the trophy description, is clear it in under 2 hours. That means there's a lot of room for safer strats, looser control over Zoe's movement, and attack and jumping patterns, and so on. That, in short, is what I'd like to offer here, together with more overarching information to help you cut out the clutter and focus strictly on what you need and where to go. But there's two pretty big problems with that, both of them sadly unavoidable, or at least mostly unavoidable. First, you will not be able to escape developing a minimally functional competence with the extremely, and I mean extremely, difficult mechanical manipulations used by the speedrunners. The sort of good news is that you don't have to be good at them. Only good enough to pull them off in a tolerable amount of time in a few locations during the first half of the game, okay? The manipulations I'm referring to, for those not already in the know, are the so-called wall jump and the double block or double bubble jump. Of the two, in my opinion, the latter is harder, especially on console. Even after getting extremely comfortable with the route and pretty much everything else in the game, my success rate with the double block and double bubble is still no better than chance. And it's virtually no different than if I was trying it for the first time, every time. So, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't meant for me, and you will find it marginally easier, but marginally easier than insanely fucking hard is still fucking hard. You copy that, you crazy bastards? The second problem is that Alwa's Awakening is not like Axiom Verge in that you cannot copy your save files. To my knowledge, you can't quit out before your death registers. You had a few seconds to do that in Axiom Verge. Neither of those are an option. The 4 death or faster requirement, make no mistake, is monstrously difficult, even if you're a very good player, and that is entirely due to a room or two in Amethyst Passage and the entirety of, you guessed it, the Altar of Echoes. Yet, there are 2 things you can do to mitigate this issue, both of which I'll try to help you with. Number 1, sometimes you'll know you're about to die. Like, you will have made a stupid jump or a bad jump, and you're about to fall in some insta-kill spikes. If that happens, you can pause and quit and restart to your last save point without taking the death. That may sound like a minor thing and obvious, and maybe it is obvious, but it's not minor. On my first successful GottaGoFast run, I probably avoided 5 deaths that way. Use it. Learn it. Embrace the cheese. Number 2, and this is a big one. As with the Little Nightmares Hard to the Core trophy, you can upload your current save file to the cloud, or I presume to a USB. And if you use that wisely, at key gateways of death, you can just download your save file and overwrite the one with your death on it. This might try your patience a bit, but if you really want to get the trophy without having to do dozens of runs that fail in the very last stage, in effect guaranteeing that you get it on your quote-unquote first try, then you should do that. To help you decide the best places to do this then, I've conspicuously marked these save points you should back up if you opt for that approach. In the video I call them safety saves, and there I recommend a minimum of 5. 1 in Void Tower, because by then you've just played a huge amount of the game without dying or dying only once or twice. 1 in Amethyst Passage, because there's some very unforgiving runes there. And 3 in the Altar of Echoes, because, yeah, you know why. And if you don't know now, you will soon. I tested out the cloud/USB method by dying a few times, and I can assure you that it works. It does work. Still, you might assume that if you do this, it would render the achievement somehow trivial. And rest assured, it definitely doesn't. You cannot avoid learning the pathing and the patterns top to bottom, front to back, and there is no way to make it to the conclusion in the required time without getting very good at the game. Very good indeed. So, my opinion, for whatever it's worth, is that you needn't feel bad about it. The way I see it, once you get the trophy, whether you use the backup option or not, you'll be good enough to get it legit, provided you get a good run. Your skill and knowledge will be there, either way. What might not be there is sufficient time and or patience to keep doing 90 or so minute runs until your bad mojo finally runs out at the end of the game. Even so, I don't think you need to justify yourself at all if you're inclined to spare yourself some unnecessary pain by doing this. It's your money, your game, your motives, and entirely your business. Do what you like. I just work here, and my job is not to judge but to help, by hook or by crook, in any way I can. In any case, it won't affect at all what you're watching in the video, as you'd ideally want to at least save at the safety save points, regardless. There's still safety saves in their way, even if you don't back them up. Point is, it changes nothing in the substance of the run, okay? I just mark them in the video. Alright. Now, with that unpleasantness out of the way, I'm going to close by doing what I did in my Axiom Verge introduction. That is to say, I'm going to provide an overall blueprint for the pathing and item collection, and give you a couple of important mechanical pointers. To take the first things first, the way I've conceptualized and visualized the run, we'll come back to that. First, take a look at the map. Maps are not easy to come by for this game. Luckily, this person you see down here, he put this map together and it has all the items, all the hidden items and everything on it. We don't need to worry about those because this is not a 100% run. It's a speed run. It's completely different. So just ignore all of the items. Still, though, none of the areas are labeled like they should be in a proper map, so I went ahead and did that, and you can see this here. So you'll notice there's I did leave some areas unspecified, little transition areas like the town of Westwood, Doom Lake, and one other village, Dark Moon Village I think it's called. Not important. These are the main areas, and there's 10 of them. 10 of them, and you'll be proceeding through them in 5 steps. So in Axiom Verge, the movement was like a pendulum. You went from left to right on the bottom, you went from left to right on the top. Alright, swinging one way to the other. Here it's more like a clean sweep. That's how I'll put it. You can see that the areas are, you do have a top and a bottom with a focal point in the Forsaken Valley, and you can go south from the Forsaken Valley, and you can go north from the Forsaken Valley, left to right, west to east, okay? What you're going to be doing is this. I'll put the map up here with the steps noted in numeric form, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see what you're doing here. I want to point this out. I made a mistake for the sake of simplicity, so you can get the general idea. In step 1, you're not going to be going down to the Cecellum depths. Okay, that's going to be in between stage 3 and stage 4. Just note that very carefully, alright? And it shouldn't be a problem because you're going to see me do it in the video, but you are not going to the Cecellum depths. You are not going to be getting the second block there and the big key over in the far west of the Forsaken Valley until after you get through Void Tower in step 3. Okay? Now, that being noted, what you're doing is this. You're going from the Forsaken Valley down into Amber Cecellum. Then, you're going from Central Alwa to the Shrine of the Sea Monk and down into the Stone Cellar. Clean sweep. Left, right, down, left, right, down. That's what you're doing. After that, the north of the map needs to be cleared. So you're going to go from the Forsaken Valley up into Void Castle. Then you're going to take a little detour and go down into the Cecellum depths to get your second block and your big key, and then resume. Go back up into the Amethyst Passage and Solstice Mountain, and then go and finish the game in the Altar of Echoes. That's your path. Now, of course, it's not going to help you much to just see this in front of you. You still gotta get a familiarity with the ins and outs of each room in the map, so you have a orientation, wherever you are. But still, you're at least going to have point A, point B at each place, and you're going to know where you're going. So, what I might do is, in each stage, each of these 5 stages, I'll mark them off with an upper third or something in my video, and tell you exactly the items you want to be getting. And yeah, there are not many. It's not quite as complicated in that respect as Axiom Verge is. Once you practice the path a little bit, it's not hard. Now, for the final issue, I have to go into the game here, because you really you're not going to be able to figure out how to do these mechanical tricks without someone explaining it to you. And I checked out Suspense's explanation, and I mean, it's not awful. He does explain it to you, but he doesn't take into account how hard these things are to do for normal people. Okay, he's a very good speedrunner, so these things seem easier to him than they are to most people. Me, I'm not, and I suck. And these things are really hard for me, and I had to figure it out myself. So, I don't want you to suffer like I suffered, so I'm going to help you do this. Now, on these finished games, I don't know, I don't know if this game is finished or not, but I want to have the block so that... God damn it, I'm in the altar. Let me try something here. Yeah, okay. Good. I can just show you this here. So, there's your bubble. Yeah, here's your block. Yeah. So, the problem here is that I have block 2 and bubble 2 by this point, and you won't when you need these things to work. I don't really know what block 2 does. I honestly don't know. I have no idea. But bubble 2 is obvious. Bubble 2 never breaks. But bubble 1, the one that you're going to be getting in the Shrine of the Sea Monk, that's gonna die on you pretty fast. You'll go on it and it'll go 1, 2, 3 pop. It'll pop on the 3rd. Just know that. So, okay. 2 issues. The wall jump and the double block, double bubble jump. The wall jump, you're going to do this. You'll see a lot of people just do it really quickly, and boy, that's hard to do. Just run up to a wall and, I can't do it. I can't do it quickly like that. So don't bother. You don't need to. Set it up. You're going to back up, push up against a wall like this, and then you're going to just tap. I use the D-pad, and I highly recommend you do as well. It's just better for controlling these types of 2D platformers. Press up against the wall, and then tap it. Okay? Now, here's what happens if you try to imitate. You're gonna cast your wand, or whatever the fuck, hit your wand out there, and try to turn around, and you'll be like, huh? I can't back up into the wall, so I can't do the jump. What's going on? What's going on? This is what I did for, I don't know, half of my life, okay? Yeah, I'm an old man now because of this. And I spent it all trying to learn the wall jump. But seriously, though, you have to find a way to make yourself stand still and move backwards while you're facing the opposite direction of the wall. So the way that you do that is, you don't press them at the same time. If you press them at the same time, that'll happen. Okay? It's very quick and it takes some getting used to. Square is the hit button, okay? So what you're going to do is, you're going to press square and then left back. You're not going to hold left because you'll turn like that. You're going to tap it. Tap square, tap back. Square back. Square back. Square back. Tap. Do not hold the directional button. It's 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. You see that? If you practice that and you get your rhythm, when you have to chain them together, you'll be able to do it a lot better. And all you have to do after making that move is press the jump button and then do it again. Okay? See, and I turned around there, but usually you're not going to have to do more than 2. There's one area where you're going to have to do 3 or 4, and not a big deal. It's in the Shrine of the Sea Monk. But again, I keep turning around. But you see how close you have to be to the wall to do this. See, you can get pretty high just doing 2. And if you hold the X button, you jump even higher. But I can't do that because my brain is in a tapping mode when I do this. So it's like, and you want to get in a rhythm when you do it. Don't. You see that? It's a rhythm thing. So I hope that explanation is clearer to you. 1, 2, jump. 1, 2, jump. 1, 2, jump. 1, 2, jump. It's gonna take a lot of getting used to, but you will be able to get it to work. Believe me, I was so frustrated with it at first, I almost fucking threw my controller into the toilet and tried to flush it. But you can get it. You're maybe not gonna get good at it, but you can get it well enough to where in the few places you need to use it, you'll be able to. Unfortunately, that's easy compared to the double jumps with your magic items. I can't really tell you how to do these things like in an expert way because I'm not good at them. I can tell you how to do it, but doing it is another thing entirely. They're just so hard to do with these controllers. The inputs have to be so fast that I find it virtually impossible. It's easier to do with the block than with the bubble, so we'll start with that. Let's say you're at some high place, you know, like you need to get over a wall. So you have this thing here, you've laid your block down, and you want to get up and get something or get over a wall. You're gonna do that. And see, with the block, you're gonna try to release it near the top of your jump. Like that. Like that. You see? I'm releasing it near the top. And you do that by pressing up and square, and then just press into the block and just keep pressing jump. Jump. See, I'm just sort of brute forcing my way doing it. You're really not going to need better than that. You could just brute force it. You're never going to need to do this like the speedrunners. They're absolutely incredible with it. They can make jumps that I just... They do this jump in the Void Tower to go up and do some skip with the block jump because you can't use a bubble in that room, so you have to do a double block jump. Oh my god. They will fly off of the second block. I tried it like 100 times and I made it once, and I have no idea how I did it. So the idea with the block jump is you're doing it at the top of your jump. That was a really good jump. The bubble is different, and this is why it's harder. With the bubble, you're going at the bottom of your jump. You want to cast it almost immediately. Immediately when you jump off. See, it is so hard. You're really only going to need to do that in 2 places. To get to the boss, to the sea monk, really quickly, without having to get the double bubble before you do it, and to go down to the stone cellar. There's a big wall, and you have to go up and break something, and you can't get up there unless you do the double bubble. I want to get it once, but it's hard to do because I don't have the flashing bubble to tell me when my magic is refilling. Basically, you're going to wait for it to flash twice, your bubble, and jump off right as your meter is about to refill. Cast your bubble and jump on it. See, I always cast my bubble too late. I can't... I'm trying to... When I do that, I'm trying to hold up and cast the bubble right when I jump up, but not jump straight up. So you got to kind of hold diagonal and then press X right after you cast your second bubble. My friends, it is really fucking hard. Really, really fucking hard. I don't know if I'm even going to be able to do it with the bubble 2. It just... You have to jump before you cast the bubble, or else that happens. You know, you fall off. So you gotta jump, cast, keep pressing up. And for some reason, she just, you know, she doesn't cast it quickly a lot of the time. There it is. I got it. I fell off because I was pressing right, mashing right. So there you go. And oftentimes it will take me about that long to do it. The good thing is that you're not going to be pressed for time taking this route. You're going to be finishing probably in 1:30, I guess. You'll probably be 10 or so minutes slower than me if it's your first time. That was my first run. It was about 1:30 exactly. And yeah, so you're not going to be pressed for time. You could take 10 fucking minutes to do this when you need to do it. I recommend, though, practicing it at the areas where you need to do it, and that will be marked very clearly in my video. You'll see where the areas are. Okay, so that's about it for the introduction. This was a pretty long one, but I had a lot to cover. And this game deserves it. This game deserved an hour-long introduction, despite these tricky mechanical issues that admittedly the developers did not intend. They were just things that speedrunners figured out how to manipulate. Apart from that, everything works very fluidly. You know, all the mechanics are very good. Her jump is very responsive. She can float high. You can tap and jump lower, which you're going to have to do, especially in this area. So tap, tap, or jump high. It's great. This game deserves it. Elden Pixels deserves it. It's a wonderful work of art, and I'm happy that I discovered it. I'm happy that I took a few Metroidvania fans' advice and gave this game a whirl. You'll be frustrated at first, but fight through it. Use walkthroughs. Tame it a little bit. With all that being said, let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Alwa's Awakening. Enjoy.